Okay.
There. We got this going here. And so we should be good.
Okay,
so
okay.
I'm going to read out your biography here. Sir Tim Waterstone is one of Britain's most successful businessmen, having built the Waterstones empire that started with one small shop in 1982 and grew within 10 years to become the largest bookselling group in Europe. In this charming and evocative memoir, entitled The Face Pressed Against a Window, he recalls his formative years in a small town in rural England at the end of the Second World War and the troubled relationship he had with his father before moving on to the epiphany he had while studying at Cambridge, which set him on the road to Waterstones and gave birth to the creative strategy and business philosophy that made him a high street name. We're at the Garrick Club in London. Welcome to the Bibliophile.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Maybe we should get this out of the way right off the bat. Waterstones with an apostrophe, Waterstones without an apostrophe. It doesn't have an apostrophe now because you don't own it anymore? Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, it had an apostrophe its first 30 years of life, and there's certain problems about trading online, getting apostrophes in are difficult and everything else, and the CEO got hold of me and said, you could have a heart attack if we drop the apostrophe. So I said, I'm not going to have a heart attack if you drop the apostrophe. I said, drop the goddamn apostrophe. So they dropped the apostrophe, and it was all very sweetly done with me, and I didn't mind at all. I mean,
Okay.
But anyway, the press was certainly convinced I didn't mind, so I had to spend my time thinking, I don't mind.
Right. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yeah.
And the CEO called you up and said that. That was decent of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good. That was James Daunt.
James Daunt, yeah.
Yeah, okay. You dedicate the book to your 8 children.
Yeah, 3 marriages and 3 children, 2 children. And, it's been a long life.
That's nice that they're up front like that.
But actually, I've actually loved it, and it probably sounds too good to be true, but it's a quite remarkably united family. There's 8 kids, absolutely astonishingly a group, and meet and have hilarious parties, twice a year and everything.
That's great.
Some in London, some way away from London, but they really are remarkable, and that's lovely for me.
Totally, yeah. There's often so much friction in families like that.
But there really isn't any, and I know you can't believe me if I say that, but there isn't. And I don't know, I put it down to, my oldest son, Richard, is 60 yesterday. He's been a remarkable force, I think, in keeping everybody together. But they all just gelled. And with modern communications help like anything. There's WhatsApp groups and there's family WhatsApp groups. And it's so much easier these days, isn't it? But no friction, no.
That's
and
really
not thanks to me, I have to say. I mean, it's me that's caused the friction by getting married every 10 minutes, but I mean, it's not thanks to me, it's thanks to the niceness of the children, I guess. And one of the children is adopted, which is the 5th child. And that can cause problems too. I mean,
yes,
an adopted child when it's a baby is absolutely great, but an adopted child when it's adolescent, and she's 46 now. So that was another cause, which might have caused friction. And in fact, the reverse, I think, it's sort of everybody felt they wanted to help bring her up. Can
I just ask you to put your hand there just because of the... Yeah, sorry. Well, that's really great. That is good. It's interesting you refer to Waterstone's employees as family, too.
Yeah, it sounds too schmaltzy, doesn't it? But we started off with this huge dream, in 1982, preposterous dream. I had no money at all, 2 lots of alimony and everything else. I was out, and but I had this vision of what it was going to be, and the moment I brought in the first 5 or 6 people who were actually experienced booksellers, thank God they were,
Yes, from Hatchard's.
Yeah, from Hatchard's, yeah. I mean, they just came in a group. I mean, like a sort of presents from. Absolutely brilliant. And they knew exactly, when they read the business plan, they understood exactly what I was trying to do. Exactly. So they then carried that sort of...
What were you trying to do? Exactly.
Well, to have... let's pan back to 1982, and then in Britain there was W.H. Smith, which had 35 or 40% of the market, and they were terrible, really terrible stores.
Why were they so terrible?
The staff were selling books, they were selling plastic toys, they were selling fizzy drinks, they were selling chocolate bars, they were selling anything, and knew nothing about what they were selling. So there was no fervour about that sort of thing about selling books. The stores were very scruffy, and Smiths were very arrogant because they had such a huge market share. They felt, nothing could defeat them. That was a very, very big market share. On top of that, you had the big university towns had, on the whole, very good bookshops. In Oxford and Cambridge and in London and Edinburgh and Glasgow and in Dublin. And
you had your epiphany in Heffers.
Which is now ours, of course. Yes.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
Which is where I first. But so they were great. But outside that, there were some pretty little village stores. But honestly, the standard was absolutely deplorable.
Right.
And I'd been working in New York for a little bit, and I'd been transpired by the quality, I thought then, of New York bookselling, which was so much better than I'd seen in England, with the graduates, undergraduates and graduates working in the stores. Everybody knew everything, everyone was enthusiastic. The writers loved going there, and open till 11 o'clock at night. They'd deliver your book at any time of night. Why couldn't we do it here? That was the vision, if you like. But to do it I thought the market was actually gaping for it here, because despite everything, the book market was quietly growing. There was only 1 year between end of the Second World War and 1982 when we started, when the market went backwards by a very small degree in 1969. Don't ask me why that was, I don't know. But every other year it was a very, very solid market, but so badly served not by the publishers who were publishing great, but so badly served the retailers. Now, Hatchard's absolutely understood. The Hatchards present to me, of these 5 people, absolutely understood what I was saying, because Hatchard itself was a very good store.
Yeah.
But they understood immediately what I was trying to do. And I said, look, we're going to grow this like crazy. We're going to grow it like crazy.
Yeah, so Why did you want to grow it like so fast?
Because I thought the idea was so good. I wanted to move on like lightning.
Right.
Before anybody else tried the same thing, really.
I see. To become dominant.
You get a sort of critical mass going, and particularly, it's not just critical mass in terms of stores, it's also critical mass in terms of public knowledge about, and press knowledge, and media knowledge about what we were doing.
Awareness.
And the media got behind us immediately. I mean, just absolutely immediately. And the literary press was right behind us, So it was always going to win, but of course it had no money all the time. So
that's it. Your book, in the book, you talk about how often you're out there pounding the pavement trying to get more money.
Every day. I mean, all the time. You're being turned down all the time.
Yeah.
But if you're turned down 99 times once, then somebody's going to pick you up.
It's a numbers game, isn't it?
Go on and on and on. The Hatchard's people knew so much. They were sort of fantastic, egging me on all the time, so they were so loving it themselves, Right. And they had a bit of equity each to all that sort of thing, which helped a little bit. And I think it's over-egged sometimes at that point, but nonetheless they did have a little bit of equity, so they felt it was their business too, a little bit,
Yeah.
And then what happened was that young students wanted to join us, and it became a sort of game. If you were honestly Oxford or Cambridge, you've read English like I did, what the hell are you going to do with it when you come down,
Right.
And suddenly Waterstones became something you could do when you're straight out of Trinity, Oxford, you could do that for a couple of years while you're writing your third novel, and you're doing all the rest of it. So there was an absolute tranche of people wanting to join us, these young kids, loving their literature, enormous enthusiasm.
And funny, you say that, and this is John Mitchison. He talks about his popular podcast now basically being modeled on the staff rooms.
I remember him saying that in the book.
It's that the Waterstones staff room were the model for what he
and
exactly
he says
what
in
he
the
wanted.
book he had better conversations, and the Waterstone staff were
Yes.
filthy as they were, and he ever had at Oxford. You know?
Yes. So that's a big part
so
of
the
it.
enthusiasm was so enormous, you know.
Yeah.
And we loved them to have enthusiasm. We had somebody who knew more about crime fiction than anybody I have ever known in any language. So we sort of let her have a bit of a run at it, you know. And she developed a following of people who looked at this, you know. And the press, it was always an easy press story all the time. But, you know, an awful lot of my time was spent raising the money, but I enjoyed the challenge of it. But nonetheless, I mean, God knows how I survived it, you know. But also the trade itself was biffing back at us. The publishers loved us, you know. The authors loved us. But there was a furious fight back from other booksellers, from Smiths particularly.
Well, also the association didn't let you become a member, the charter, whatever.
You remember that? I mean, it didn't make any difference to us, but the insult was so absolutely unbelievable. You know.
Well, they're just afraid of you.
Yes, and insulting. And I think I also this book's been edited so much I can't remember what's been taken out of it.
Sure.
But I remember an occasion when we had a young manager, he's just 23 years old, and he stood up at the Booksellers Association meeting to ask a question. And he had to say, "My name is Peter Coates, and I'm from Waterstones." And everybody booed him. And he was quite a shy kid. He came from the same college as me at Cambridge, actually, so I felt I was huggy towards him. But he's quite shy, spectacled, literary kid. And one of these people booed him when he got to his feet.
Yeah.
So I then wanted to open another fucking shop right in front of the
Right. Well, you talk about how there's this, so it's almost like this fight in you, and how much you actually savored fighting W.A. Smith, and combative almost. You were, because of this attitude. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, that helped you succeed.
But we were winning all the time. It never really worried me, you know.
No. And you were winning, why? Because of the knowledgeable staff?
Because the staff were unbeatable. I mean, they were just incredible people.
But you hired you interviewed almost
all of them.
Right.
They were just little interviews. All I wanted to do really was to look them in the eye and say, "Look, this is the dream. Are you up for this?" You know,
right?
And just get the feedback where they were. We took on more women than men, which was quite interesting in those days. I didn't do that deliberately. Just when we looked at the staff list, I thought, "My God, we've got more women than men." And it was wonderful, you know.
Well, there's a lot more women readers than male readers too.
Yeah. And I think women are fantastic to work with too. I love working with them.
Yeah.
So
other women don't think that so much, but
okay. So, I mean, the slight joke is my next door neighbour these days is Alan Bennett. We live in Primrose Hill, and we opened a Leeds. He comes from Leeds in Yorkshire, you know, which is he's a sort of Leeds god. You know. There was a very well-known, very, very long-established bookshop there, which Alan loved. You know, that was his childhood was going there. And we thought it was absolutely hopeless, without knowing this was Alan Bennett's favourite bookshop. So we opened as close to it as we possibly could, and they simply closed down. They didn't even
They threw the towel in. Yeah. Okay. Now, your first ad. This is how you start the memoir off. You indicated that you wanted to try and get employees the best, happiest literary booksellers. I thought happiest was such a, I mean, often people, the stereotype of a bookseller is someone who's not happy, someone who's kind of grumpy. But you specifically asked for happy booksellers.
I wanted a place and it all sounds too pious rather, but it is what I wanted. That's what I got. Actually, it's just people who would love to go for the ride and really enjoy it. And
okay.
What I didn't want was people who just thought the easiest thing to do is to work in a bookshop. You know, it's not an easy way of life at all. You have to work like hell in a bookshop. You know.
So you revolutionized the industry. Did you do that by basically importing the American way?
Well, people say I think that was my fault. I think in a very early interview, as I did it with you a moment ago, I was with Doubleday stores in New York, which really got me going, and
Right.
I thought we could do it better than Doubleday, but nonetheless, it was that sort of exuberant bookselling that Doubleday did in those days with those stores. It would get us going. It wasn't really American; it was very, very English. Actually, once we actually hear it, it was very English. And but the thing was that what helped enormously was the enthusiasm of the authors behind us.
You mean at readings? You mean like wanting to come in?
There were no literary festivals in Britain in those days, except for Hay was just starting at that time, but it was very embryonic Hay, but that was just starting. And Cheltenham was quite a well-established festival, but there was nothing else, So we told our stores, you are a festival, you open in Norwich. There's a lovely store in Norwich.
I know, I was just there.
So we said to the Norwich, you are perpetual book festival in Norwich. So be it,
Yes.
So it readings, signings, talkings, things. Yeah.
Okay. So that was one of the ways you revolutionized it then, the industry. Well, I mean, longer hours too. Bigger stores.
It wasn't just that. I mean, the 8 shops were open on Sundays, which was illegal, incidentally, but we never took any notice that it was open on Sundays.
Nice.
And we were only prosecuted once because, why prosecute a bookshop for opening on a Sunday afternoon? I mean, it's doing the most harmless, lovely thing. And most people just couldn't face the prosecution. They never prosecuted.
Right.
We used to get a sort of warning letter occasionally, but not a marvel. And so Sundays, late evening.
It's like against motherhood. Right?
Yes. The revolution was Smiths dominating the market. So most people's experience of book selling, book buying was the W.H. Smith store in Norwich or wherever you may be, which was awful.
It was
and
awful.
So the revolution, if you like, is for the first time they saw what a lovely thing bookshops can be, looking rather like this.
Right. With the beautiful lighting and well, the other thing is the range too. You brought in a huge range, never before.
Colossal range.
Right.
I remember opening in 1999. Have you seen the Waterstones store in Piccadilly here?
I have, yes.
Yeah, which is the biggest bookstore in the world, in fact.
Yeah.
But I remember opening that in 1999, and I did a stop for it.
What year was that?
1999, 24 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I remember doing the stop with everybody, but getting the stopping. And we'd never done a store of that size or anything like it.
It was like 260,000 titles or something, isn't it?
Yeah, we put in 290,000, and it was a wonderful thing to do. It was just,
I bet.
And
well, it's making all sorts of wonderful titles accessible now.
Yeah. I remember we had a little team who did fiction, I mean, we couldn't get them to go home at night. We were getting the fiction, poetry, drama.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. A big children's section there too.
They're almost proselytizing for the stuff that they think is great.
Sorry, say again?
They're kind of proselytizing for the titles that they think are worth reading.
Yes.
Trying to interest the world in stuff that they think is great, right?
Yeah. I tell you, one of the tricks we had, it's one of the points of virtue we had, I think, is that, well, let's take John le Carré. What you like, they say John le Carré, 25 novels. The temptation is just to stop 6 or 8, which sell like crazy, and some of them don't sell at all. Le Carré's rather a bad example. Well, let's take Graham Greene or Huxley or somebody. You get the trick is to have everything from that author, everything, and you will then sell everything. So the minor titles will sell, but also people will know you're going to have it.
Yeah, so you're reliable as a source.
Yeah, exactly. Example from War would be Helena. Which you normally sell 1 copy a year, or if you can find it, whereas you sell 300 copies of Brideshead Visits. But we always made a point of having Helena there, and we sold Helena. People say, how interesting.
Yes, yeah.
You get a sort of churn of self-satisfaction when you do it.
It's almost like helping to educate the reading public. I mean, they can go in and they can see all sorts of other titles.
And people want to be educated.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first 30 years. Times are very different.
I was going to say, I mean, now it's the internet that provides a massive range. And this is what the question that I had for you was, what is James Daunt having to do now that you didn't already do?
Nothing. It's the same thing. And that's what James does so well. The brilliance having James Daunt there is he's got two very nice shops of his own,
I know, yeah.
Yeah, he's doing the same thing. He's got a total reverence towards a very high quality range and enthusiasm. He has a more difficult task than I ever had, because I think the whole group is so vast now that it's very difficult to keep the same. Although he would love to do it, it's much more difficult for him to keep the same sort of team generation going. And of course, but basically the James Daunt offers the same offers we ever had,
Right.
And he just had more difficult task in.
Well, he had to turn things around because HMV kind of.
Well, HMV fucked it up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, fuck. It's good.
Like you've never seen. I mean, it was just,
right. And how did they fuck it up? It was because of commercialization.
I fought a war with them against it. I was chairman of the group. I couldn't stop them doing it. It was private equity companies coming in and ripping out the stock.
And what they were discounting and promotions and
shortening the range.
Shortening the range. Yeah.
Drastically shortening the range.
Because what? That saved money?
Because they thought, why are you stocking a Helena? Let's hold that example.
Yeah.
When you're only going to sell 2 copies a year. Why? Explain to me why. You have to say, well, I can't explain to you because you just don't understand what bookselling is. It's the sheer width of the range, it's the intelligence of the range that gets people longing to come to the store.
Yeah, it's the browsing that they love to do, and this is you're catering to that.
Yes. But what is so interesting is that, I'll ask James, but I think the figure will still be correct, that well over 70% of people in our day buying books and Waterstones were buying books they never meant to buy in the first place. They went in because they wanted to find Helena. They got so happy at the store. So discretion purposes with everything.
Yes.
And I think that's still true. Now, what is different is he's got to face is a very mature Amazon. And,
well, this is it. Yeah, you didn't have that.
Well, I had it at the end, but it was very frightening. But what none of us quite understood about Amazon was that where they are absolutely brilliant as far as bookselling is concerned is, look, let's go back to Piccadilly. So 290,000 titles. Biggest bookstore in the world had 290,000 titles in it. In Britain, there were 600,000 titles in print at that time. I mean, we have in print in this modern Britain way more than anybody else in the world, much bigger than America has,
Mm-hmm.
The titles are kept in print here for much longer.
Right.
So what Amazon proved to be absolutely brilliant at was dealing with the long tail,
Right.
which was so long for us. You really couldn't reach all of that tail, but it was perfect for online bookselling, which Amazon have 100% of the market now, actually, to our relief, really.
But you're talking about print on demand then?
Print on demand also, but just physical books too.
In stock that they have.
Yeah, which even the biggest bookstore in the world couldn't. We had a wonderful stock, but we couldn't cope with the whole length.
No.
So they were brilliant at picking up there. The other thing is that about Amazon is that the Amazon market has changed here for books somewhat than it was when it first came in. I think what is still true, is that if you've got one title in your mind when you wake up on the Monday morning, a book I must buy today, and there isn't a Waterstones or whatever nearby, you go on Amazon. If there's one knockout book which you really want to have, you go to Amazon, hope for the best, But what they don't have is the browse market, and however hard they try, they don't get the browse market.
Right.
The browse market is a physical thing. Waterstones have been very bad at online bookselling, incidentally. I think it's something which we never succeeded in doing well. Why isn't Waterstones' website more successful? I can't really tell you.
But it's improved.
I think it got ruined by HMV originally, and we've never quite got it right since. But the stores are still of very high quality.
Yeah, no. You speak of Norwich. I was just there yesterday, and that store in Norwich is gorgeous. There's lighting, and you've got a really nice little cafe upstairs.
Did you read the book through to the end? You don't have to say you did.
Oh, I did. In fact, I've got a question to you for you about those two short stories that were plonked in there.
I wanted to say that the first story is Norwich. I don't know if you picked that up.
I didn't pick that up. Okay. No, I didn't.
That's
I don't think that's not. I don't know that. Was that mentioned?
Jumped off the top of the.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the store that she jumped off.
Norwich store. Yeah. Oh, well, she went up.
I don't know that you mentioned Norwich in.
I didn't.
No, so I wouldn't have. How would I pick that up?
I carefully didn't. Yeah, it was Norwich. There's a multi-story car park fairly near there. She climbed up into it.
Okay, so the listeners are probably thinking, what the hell are they talking about? You put, and this is what's going to be a question of mine toward the end, and that was, quote, Hemingway talking about, fiction often allows us to tell the truth more clearly. And you put in two short stories, one about a beautiful love affair of two young lovers, and one of them, the male dies, and the woman commits suicide, and then there's another one, so it's about love and Waterstones, and the second one is about a marriage. The husband is in love with a woman 20 years his junior, his wife, but she's not so in love with him, and she falls for someone else. I'm thinking, what the hell is this doing at the end of his memoir? I'm thinking, is this supposed to be him? Did he have... anyway, maybe you can ask that question.
It's personal.
I kind of figured.
The people who know me know why that's there.
Right. So and I should mention that the woman who committed suicide, you go out of your way quite a number of times in that short story to say how attractive she is. And I'm thinking, that's interesting.
Yeah. I wanted to write both those stories, so they both... They're very self-indulgent, and the publisher didn't want me to include them.
No, I didn't think... Well, as a reader, I'm thinking, what the hell did he tag these two on here for? But then I'm thinking, they're very good. They're about love, which is a wonderful topic. And they're probably self-revelatory. So if you want to know who Tim Waterstone is, you might want to pay attention to these.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, the difficulty of this book was, there has to be a lot of business stuff in it. There has to be a lot of childhood in it.
Yes.
It had to. I couldn't find a way of doing it any differently.
It did. It was a bit jarring, I should say, almost bizarre. But on the flip side, it certainly gave me something to think about, and thinking about who you are.
Yes, I tried to get, there's a short chapter at the end. I haven't read this for a couple of years. But
it's published in 2019.
I talk about what happens, the rest of my life and things that came my way, and I did them, and this, that, the other. And, I tried to get back to the personal towards the end of it.
Yeah.
And
very personal. Excuse me.
But those stories had an incredible reception public reception. I mean,
they're beautiful stories. They are.
Just staggering. Both online and when I was selling the book, I was going around the country promoting it.
Right.
People would always go back to those stories then. But I thought they would never be read, those stories, but they really were. So,
they're beautiful.
It's makes the book odd, but it makes it me.
You're odd. Yeah. That's great. No. As I say, I'm not being critical. Bizarre isn't meant to be critical. I thought they were really, really interesting. They kept my attention for sure, and they made me think about who you are, which is interesting too.
Well, I wanted to lay down something which my children could read in 30 years' time. just know me through the book a bit.
Yeah. One of the interesting things here, your father, speaking of personal, in the early part of the book, you talk about how he hurt you, he snubbed you, and damaged you, and
well, I what happened when I was writing this book was that the more I started to write about my childhood, the more I remembered things that I thought I didn't know about, but things just poured out of me.
Yeah.
And it was therapy, self-induced therapy, of course, what it was. I didn't realize what I was doing, but
right. Well, you talk about Waterstones being the sort of the main driver of your life was your failed relationship with your father, and here's a way for you to sort of show your proof of worth.
I was damaged by it. I bet an awful lot of people are damaged by their parents.
Yeah, well, that's what Philip Larkin says. They fuck you up.
Yeah.
But
I'd forgotten so much, and what it made me realise that your brain stores stuff. You don't necessarily.
Yeah.
It's like sort of searching online for something, and the stuff is there.
It's there, and it's influencing what you're doing today without you knowing it in many cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were were omitted from his will. Fuck.
And there's nothing in his will anyway.
No, but
what an astonishing thing to do.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a lovely part of the book, your early years, and I mentioned it in an email to you. I couldn't help but thinking of my father. He grew up in Tunbridge Wells. He had a nanny who was actually more like his mother than his mother. He was badly sexually abused, both during the war. There was a soldier that was he only told me this in his 60s. Billeted at the house, who sodomized him, and he was abused at the school, the public school that he went to, and he was riding a bike near Tunbridge Wells, and he told me that this German plane came in and started shooting at him, and he went into the ditch, and then he came out and he saw the bullet holes in the road where he would have been if he hadn't. You have almost exactly the same story.
Same thing, extraordinary.
I know. I just my goodness.
That's an extraordinary thing.
But I just couldn't help but think, these fucking German pilots going after our children? What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
What the fuck is that?
How extraordinary that your father is.
I know. I couldn't believe it. I know.
Well, it happened, and we were on the path back, to the airfields in north of France and Belgium. They had a few bullets left. They fired at the kids. It's dreadful.
I know it's dreadful.
Yeah.
Shit. Anyway.
I find that extraordinary, your father.
Well, I couldn't believe it when I read your story. I couldn't believe it because that's his story, and that he was from Tunbridge Wells. And,
anyway, just 5-6 miles from there.
Yeah. Anyway, no books in the house. Your parents' house, you said?
No. Well, there were 3. No, there's nobody read. Which actually was quite unusual in those days because there's no television. There was
yes, exactly.
Cursory radio.
Tell me about Miss Santoro.
Yeah, she was a huge influence on me. I was a funny little boy because I had a big stutter, and I was a slow reader. Technically I couldn't read, at the age of 6 or so. Mm-hmm. But I arrived in this bookshop and I just loved the books, And she wasn't a very nice woman or anything, but she just was very kind to me. And I think she saw in me, I don't know, she did whatever she did. And she actually taught me to read, and physically how to read.
Wow.
And then, having taught me how to read, she then sort of. I knew her all the way until I went to Cambridge,
And she was great at book marketing, wasn't she?
Fantastic,
yeah. What did she teach you then?
She may have taught me everything, I don't know. She was an important woman. Now, that's an example, actually, of how good an independent bookstore can be, Okay.
This was in Crowborough, is it?
Crowborough, yeah, which is near Tunbridge Wells. And And that was an example of it is possible to run a very good independent bookstore in not a very bookish town. They do a very good job.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that I do with these podcasts is it's just now I'm introducing it now finally, and that is really I'm interested in you're a best practitioner, a bookseller. You're one of the best in the world, one of the best the world has ever seen. So I'm interested in what you did, how you did it, why you did it, and why does it matter? Just to keep those in mind. So just in a nutshell, what did you do?
I think I did something very simple. Is I saw a market which I personally loved and which I thought was astonishingly badly treated at the distribution end. I mean, it's so conceited, I can't bear the thought of it. But then you asking me the question, I'm going to answer it.
Yeah.
And I think what I did was what I know was I did. I got 320 stores out there which were providing for the British public a means of access to... I mean, what's this?
Means of what?
A means of access to literature.
Yeah, and cultural life.
It was just as simple as that, It's not...
You were filling a gap, a void, a vacuum?
It was a huge gap.
Right.
I mean, there were other multiples that started to follow us. Their borders went to Britain.
Right.
And couldn't get a grip on the market. They made the mistake of sending American people to run British bookstores, which is
not good.
Silly mistake. It's just sheer determination. I mean, Blackwell's tried to buy us. We refused to sell, and then we bought them. I mean, it was just this sheer determination, really.
Yeah, you had an epiphany in Heffers bookstore in Cambridge, and that epiphany was.
Do you know the store or not?
I was just there. Yeah, I was there about a week ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I thought what Heffers was, and that's what I got the sort of vision out of it. That what you need to do is you can't do Heffers around the country. What you can do is have, which has great stores. You have a sort of the virtues of Heffers, which together with the energy of Miss Santoro, Crowborough, who do anything to sell books,
Right,
anything.
Right.
I mean, using me as a little boy to go around with a bicycle delivery for her.
Yes, yeah.
So something to put the two together, you have something fantastic. I mean, Heffers was fast asleep. I mean, they weren't trying to do anything, just sitting there in the middle of Cambridge.
Yeah. Waiting for people to come and buy stuff. Yeah.
Heffers, but with energy and
I see.
drive.
Heffers with energy. Okay. And you learnt about branding from Allied breweries, really. And you had maybe you could tell me about Garrick Club Brown.
I learnt a lot there, actually. What we did succeed in doing, Waterstones, was branding it very, very early on.
Branding, like a clear corporate strategy, objective.
But making it very, not being shy about publicity, but we were shameless about it, But we had the market with us all the time. People wanted us to work, and people got to know the name. The name is good, incidentally. I'm not saying it's proudly good, it's mine, but it's a slightly unusual name. It's a rather good book selling. It's not good to be called Smith,
Yes. Yeah. Well, this Derek Holden Brown always had time for workers.
Well, what I liked about him was, I'm wildly left-wing and have been all my life,
Mm-hmm.
And this was you can't believe how class-ridden Britain was in those days, but he was astonishingly good at, I was his PA, not even his PA, it was the person who carried his bags around after him, he was teaching me as he went, but he was fantastically good at going into a brewery, one of ours, a vast company in those days, a brewery, and he knew people's names, he remembers people's names of people's children, and it wasn't patronising, it was just beautifully done.
And it was genuine.
Yeah, absolutely genuine.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is fantastically good. And you could start off with a light of joy at seeing him, and there'd be a little joke about the local football team, and then did this and that. He just was like a sort of hack politician, if you like, but he actually meant it,
Friendly.
Yeah.
Friendly.
I learned a lot from that. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Just jumping back to the financing, you had to personally guarantee the company's ongoing rental liability.
Well, that's what enabled us to do it. But I mean, it was an incredibly risky thing to do. But
And you kept opening one after another after another.
the only way I could get the shops open, yeah, because I couldn't put any more money in the company. Because I was, that's how I managed to hold a 25% stake all the way. Because the people backing us kept on upping my equity because of the fact that I was guaranteeing rents. It was a sort of payback.
You mentioned a Dane Howell and Julian Toland, and you saying they are incomparable. Well, why were they incomparable?
Knowledge was just incredible, and their enthusiasm about selling books. Dane was an interesting story. He was a child actor, a very, very successful one. He's sort of curly-headed, very small. And his agent called him in when he was 16 and said, Dane, it's all been wonderful. And that's the end of it, Dane. Go out in your life. So poor Dane, who spent his life not being educated, but being a child star in every West End show, was suddenly out of work. So he'd always loved reading, so he became an absolutely phenomenally successful bookseller and with great actorly charm. And Julian Toland simply knew more about certain sections of fiction than I believe anybody can know. Totally.
They're both dead?
Yeah. So
are they dead?
The staff adored them and admired them for their knowledge. And They were great. Really, really wonderful.
And so knowledge, as much as anything, was the respect. They got respect because of the knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The young staff loved it.
Right.
And I had to be careful that I knew enough myself, because the young staff, all straight out of Oxbridge, knew a hell of a lot.
Right.
And we weren't shy at showing it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm quoting Paul Bagley.
Bagley, yeah.
What also happened was that Tim Waterstone gave young graduates, in particular, an extraordinary level of responsibility for running often £5 million businesses, for hiring, training, and occasionally firing staff, for managing costs and stock levels, for choosing and occasionally returning all the books in the store, for deciding which to display and promote, and for inviting every author in to read and talk. Above all, it was the most fun place I ever worked. I made friends for life. Waterstones was a stepping stone for the ambitious, but also a haven for the sensitive and a meeting place for the like-minded. That was very nicely put.
He's head of fiction at Bloomsbury now.
He what?
He's head of fiction at Bloomsbury now.
Oh, is he? Okay. That's nicely put.
Yeah. What was so extraordinary, really, was that, we had serious financiers behind us. All of them were on the board.
Yeah.
And yet they allowed us to run that model.
They allowed you to what?
To run that model whereby we could give this responsibility to young people.
Right.
But they did. They were actually great. I've had terrible experience with financiers over the years. Some terrible experiences, some very good ones. The difference, the spectrum is so vast between good and bad.
You reference, I've heard this from a number of people, that John Sandoe is magnificent, you said. You said magnificent. So why magnificent?
Terribly small, about the size of... you can't move for books, literally. I mean, it's... again, it's the knowledge and the drive, But I've got a very good bookseller. I rather like John Sandoe's. John Sandoe's in Chelsea. There's one in Primrose Hill, which is where I live at the moment, which is very like that. And they know all their customers, so they ring and they say, Tim, I got the new John Barton in, Can I keep your copy? And of course you say, oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
Fantastically good at knowing their customers, knowing what the customers like, making friends with their customers.
Right.
Sandoe's famously brilliant at it. He even sends you books and charges you for them you didn't actually order.
Oh, goodness. Just expecting that you'll love it, right? And you'll want it. I'm not sure if I'd like that so much. Perfect stock, perfect staff, perfect control. Can you explain that?
Yeah. Well, talking about control, how the hell we did control it, I cannot think, because the internet didn't exist. There were clearly no mobile phones, hardly any PC. I mean, how did we get it? I don't know how we did it. But somehow we did.
Mm-hmm. That was your mantra, really. The perfect stock, perfect staff, perfect control. I'm still not sure what you mean by that, though.
The staff knew what I meant.
The perfect control, what does that mean? Just that you...
It meant trusting people to stay in line. We'll trust you with that store. You're 23 years old. You've got £5 million off birth certificates there.
Right.
But you'll stay in line. And you won't let it get out of control. You won't allow staff to help themselves to money. You won't, you...
Yeah, okay. And you're very focused on sales per square foot.
Yeah. That's what our prime control was, really.
Right, I thought so, yeah. That's how you could measure how they were doing in different stores.
Let's take an example. This shelf behind you here, these shelves behind you here, okay?
Right.
Now, a really good bookseller, let's say that's fiction, a really good bookseller, we would say we want you to make £500 a square foot off that over the course of the year. So, do it as you wish, stock it as you wish. You know our rules, You stock the minor titles, you stay with the major titles. A really good, really brilliant bookseller will get you £500 a square foot over the year. A perfectly good bookseller, but not as good, will get you £400 a square foot.
Right.
It makes a fantastic difference to the... So if you make people think in terms of how can I use the space to its absolute maximum in terms of getting sales per square foot of it, what do I do? And it was effective because any other booksellers were thinking about it in those terms. But John Sandoe, in his private way, certainly was. He squeezed every
yeah. What's the breakdown between backlist and front lists? 80% of your sales was backlist?
Yeah, front list is what it says, what it means, new titles.
Yeah, yeah.
But you go back to Smith's 100% of their business was front list. Front list,
yeah. I liked how you talk about site selection. You just followed Marks and Spencer's. Right? Is that right?
Yeah. Well, they spent all the money on
Yeah, that's good. So you hired someone to just keep tabs of where they were going. You got this list of points about entrepreneurship in the book. This is 7 of them. And you're a fan of Sam Walton, the Walmart guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had an influence on you, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know how he's regarded, man, but to me he's a genius in some ways.
Yeah, I think he screwed up a lot of towns, like he screwed up their center high streets. But
I just like the spirit of what you're saying. Everyone's telling you you're going the wrong way. Then, yeah.
Yes, that's right. He countered to the conventional wisdom, right? And we did touch on this. Entrepreneurs are particularly good at identifying uniqueness and differentials. And then shared values. This was about branding. You shared the values of your potential customers. Would that be correct, would you say?
Yeah.
And you conveyed those values.
We conveyed the values, yeah.
And what are those values?
Yeah, I mean, it's on that note. There is a magazine here called Which. You won't have heard of it. It's a consumer. It's very, very long established. It's not really a magazine. It's Consumers Association sort of magazine, if you like.
They did a survey, right?
It's like the sort of National Trust,
Right.
And they do surveys all the time. Well, they on various things, but every 2 or 3 years they do a survey on your most loved high street names. One at the top 100 of the one you like least. And ever since it was, Waterstones had grown big enough to be sort of around enough towns, we've never been out of the first 4.
W.H. Smith's down the bottom, right?
100, yeah. Regularly, the last one of all.
Right.
And
so why?
Because their carpets are filthy, the staff are all over the place, it's just a dreadful place to be, But even when we were small, we were still ranking up with Marks and Spencer's, with John Lewis, with
And again, that is because why? Why?
We opened in Bath once. There's that lovely street. Comes down towards the Abbey. A lovely big, really beautiful bookstore.
Uh-huh.
Perhaps one of the most beautiful ones. But I remember opening it and then rushing back to London and doing the standing again. And I went back again on the Saturday and sat having a cup of coffee in a coffee shop in whatever the street is. And there was a couple of women having some morning coffee. And clearly it was one woman was staying with the other woman. So this one woman was the host showing her this other woman, Bart. And she said, we got them this wonderful bookstore. Do you know they've been there 100 years? Nice. And I thought, we only opened last Tuesday. I'm getting terribly conceited in this conversation.
No, that's fine.
It's not fine. It's painful. But anyway, go on with it.
Well, I do want, again, I want to know what you do. You told me what you did and how you did it. Are you comfortable with, have you covered off those things?
Yes.
Okay, and then why you did it. Why did you do it?
I wanted to do it because I didn't like working in corporations. I'd worked for Smiths, which I absolutely hated.
Did you get fired from W?
I was slightly fired. Yeah.
Right. Why'd you get fired?
Not being a team player.
Oh, right.
I wasn't exactly a team player, I must admit.
No. Okay.
So I was at the age of 41 where I was free and I wanted to do this very badly.
Right. You just had this, you knew it was right, the rightness of it. Is that it?
I knew it was right. I knew the plan was great.
Yeah.
I knew I was absolutely broke. Nothing to do with it, so how was I going to do it,
So you needed to get them financing.
But I just thought that I would find people to back it.
And why did you do it again?
I thought it was a fantastically wonderful idea in a market which I absolutely loved,
Yeah. Okay, here's Waterstones, what it means. 275, page 275 on my paperback edition. And it's Atlantic published this book. Will Atkinson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed him.
Do you know him?
Well, I did interview him, a lengthy interview, because he was such an impressive marketing person. He did the marketing for Faber and Canongate and that group of independents, and did it brilliantly.
He's a good guy.
But he started at Waterstones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So many people in the business.
Yeah. I mean, staggering.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so here's Waterstones. Now, this is Sathnam Sangara in the Times in 2017. It's Waterstones' survival. Its survival really matters to Britain. I am not talking here about the whimsical romance of what books mean for writers, but what a bookshop means for any community, economically and culturally. The survival of a really great branch of Waterstones in my hometown of Wolverhampton, for instance, even as the city centre suffers from an epidemic of empty shop units, is more than an important cultural symbol. It encourages reading, literacy, and intellectual exploration in a way that the web never will be able to. Waterstones is a cultural symbol. It's more than that. And this is you here. I believe the nation's cultural good health would not have been the same without us.
It's a beautiful compliment, though. He's a difficult man, too. I was amazed to read that. I mean, I was very proud when I read that, because I think coming from him, that's. I mean, we started in 1982, and I really do believe that we did. Maybe this is the last thing I could say. I really do believe that we actually we were a major impact on the cultural good health of Britain. I really do think we were. I believe that.
I do want to finish on your life philosophy. What I like in life is comradeship, team loyalty, courage, and a sense of common purpose toward the achievement of a worthwhile and honorable goal, and a sense of being true to oneself by means of a compulsion to work one's socks off in a cause or a venture in which one wholly believes, a commitment to life, really, that brings happiness in its wake. And that's what it did for me.
Mm. Did I write that? Okay.
You did write that.
Okay. Well, I believe it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with me.
Thank you very much.
I've been speaking with Tim Waterstone, who, what do you do now?
What do I do now?
Yeah.
I'm writing and...
short stories or novels?
Short stories, yes. And I'll see what happens.
Very good.
I'll hand them over across to Curtis Brown in due course. If they'll either say, forget it, Tim, which they may well.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.